All right, good evening and welcome to the Cowichan Valley Regional District's FireSmart public presentation. I'm very happy to be hosting and facilitating this evening. My name is Chris Schumacher. I'm the Manager of Communications and Engagement for the Cowichan Valley Regional District. Just want to start by acknowledging that we're joining this meeting from various parts of the traditional unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, and are very happy to be doing so. Want to really briefly introduce a couple of staff members that are going to be leading the presentation this evening. We have Chase Kukovich and Joel Crawford, our FireSmart coordinators with the Cowichan Valley Regional District. They'll go through their own kind of history and qualifications briefly in the presentation, but I just wanted to give them a bit of an intro to say they'll both be responsible for administering the FireSmart program over the next several months and beyond. Both of these gentlemen have experience as firefighters in wildfire mitigation, structural protection, and I think you'll agree once you learn more about this program that we're very lucky to have them working in our region, sharing their knowledge and skill set to help us better prepare for the seemingly increasing threat of wildfires that we are facing in the Cowichan region. So the purpose of this meeting tonight is to provide you, the public, with a better understanding of the FireSmart program, and more specifically this first phase, the Kickstart project. So I don't want to steal the thunder of my colleagues who are going to go into a lot of the details of the overall program and what they're kind of working on right now and where you can potentially participate. But suffice to say, we just want to ensure that we create a solid awareness around the communities in the Cowichan for the benefits of the project to home and property owners. So before I pass it over to these gentlemen to get the presentation underway, I just wanted to provide a little bit of an overview to those who may not have participated in one of these WebEx events before. So over on your right-hand side, you'll see both the chat and the Q&A functions. So at any point during the presentation, I would encourage you, if you have a question that comes to mind, please enter it into the Q&A feature so that following the presentation, we can have an opportunity to potentially address those to the best of our ability in this meeting. You'll also see the chat function where you can pose a comment or a question either to everybody that's in the meeting and have it fully transparent. You can also pose a question or comment directly to one of the panelists here and have that answered in a private way as well if something comes up. Other than that, the presentation will be recorded and we will have it posted to the FireSmart webpage of our website. So at any point after, people can watch it and get a better understanding of what we're doing on a local context, and hopefully people can be sharing that out with their neighbors who potentially might want to learn more and participate in it as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Chase, who I believe is going to kick off the presentation for us this evening.
Thank you so much, Chris. And as you just mentioned, I'm going to get straight into it, where myself, Chase Kukovich, and Joel Crawford, the two FireSmart coordinators, will get into our Kickstart project. So I'm just going to pull up the presentation right now. Okay, perfect. Yeah, as Chris mentioned, we are unveiling the Cowichan Regional FireSmart Kickstart project, which is a joint venture between the CVRD, the Cowichan Tribes, and the municipality of North Cowichan to develop an all-encompassing FireSmart program for the Cowichan Valley. So I'm just going to highlight here how this information session is going to be outlined. We're going to start with the Instructor Introduction, where we're going to talk about our backgrounds and kind of where we're coming from and what our goals and visions are for the program. And then we're going to go into the principles of FireSmart. So just briefly outlining what is FireSmart, how are we working toward the principles of FireSmart, and what we're trying to accomplish with FireSmart. Then we're going to go into more of an information about the Kickstart project and why it's a great time even in the middle of winter, to start thinking about FireSmart and the benefits that can come up from FireSmart. And we're also going to go and look at the past examples of FireSmart projects within the Cowichan Valley and see the successes of those projects and what has been achieved. Looking toward the future goals, where we see the program in the next 5 years. And then we will facilitate a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. So I'll leave it to Joel here, and he's going to introduce himself.
Hi, Joel Crawford. Born and raised in Duncan in the Cowichan Valley. A lot of people from the valley know and remember me, so they know I've been doing the firefighting, both structural as well as wildland, for quite a while. The past few summers, I've spent most of my time on the fire lines, on the structural protection side of things, trying to save the community. So this last summer, I was at the Logan Lake fire when we pushed the fire all the way around that, but that was also due to part of a really intensive FireSmart program that the chief and the community had going for probably about 8 years out there. So it's quite a benefit to do these both hand in hand, not only the FireSmart, but as well as the structural protection side of things.
Perfect. Thanks, Joel, for the great introduction. And now I will provide an introduction of myself. I've had 4 seasons of BC wildfire experience. 3 as a unit crew member in the Revelstoke, BC, and then 1 as the initial attack crew leader, where I was working alongside fire departments, residents, large properties, and aiding in the wildfire fighting effort. I also do have 2 years of structural protection with Langford Fire Rescue. So I bring in the combination of wildfire and structural, and that's what I want to bring with the FireSmart, is trying to encompass both of these realms toward the education of FireSmart principles and goals. So I'll outline here what is FireSmart. It's a pretty broad topic. It is founded on 7 different principles. Principles that consist of education, protection, coordination of assets and communities, different jurisdictions working together, and educating property owners as well. It does bridge the gap between that awareness piece and education and preparedness of how that all comes together, of how what we talk about in an environment of education, how it comes together of being prepared for FireSmart when it is summertime. So that's again why it's a great time that we're doing this now, is to outline why it's so important, because when the summertime comes and we come into wildfire threats and dangers, we have the resources and the know-how of how protected our property is and what our plans are if there would be something that comes in. FireSmart is also a great way to reduce any potential impact of a wildfire that comes through a community. You look at the wildfires of last summer and throughout the last 5 years, and the fires are getting more intense, and they're increasing their way of going through communities in a catastrophic way. If we can provide some kind of barrier and protection of our community assets through an educational and preventative lens, which FireSmart is, we're going to reduce the damage, and that's going to be paid great dividends in communities of not having to rebuild from scratch, or in protecting many things that are significant. If you want to add on to any of that, Joel.
Yeah, when it comes to the whole FireSmart side of things, it's not just individual properties that make the difference. It makes a difference for you on a personal level, but if we can get together and build FireSmart communities where sort of each house is in essence protecting the next house and the next house and the next house, which in turn is protecting our critical infrastructures, our ambulance stations, our police stations, our hospitals, our telecom towers, our radio towers, things like that. This is all part of what we have to get into the mindset of. It's we're one valley that we're trying to protect each other's best interests in order to work together a little more effectively. And with this Kickstart program, we're going to start seeing the benefits of this, not on the giant scale that we all would appreciate, considering what's been going on, as Chase said, for the last few years, but on an individual acreage style case. So it is going to make a fairly decent impact in the valley, considering with the grants that we have, we'll be carrying on until next January for sure. So I think we can make a fairly large impact within a year with some of the projects and some of the fuel mitigation that we'll be doing. On to you, Chase.
Yeah, that's great. And I think just to add on as well with the slide here, the graphic at the bottom provides a great example of how fire can be very intense with a lot of vegetation. But if you thin that through toward your assets, like your house or valuable possessions that you have, you can see how the fire can decrease the intensity and give a better chance of protecting your assets. So the graphic in the bottom does a great little example of highlighting that. So moving on to certain aspects of FireSmart, I mentioned a few in the previous slide. One that is a great asset and a great resource is a FireSmart assessment. These are found online at firesmart.com, and they're under the resources tab. This is an example here in the slide is a home assessment where it highlights the home ignition zone and works from there outward. So out defining what kind of vegetation is within those critical non-combustion zones, or zone 1, which is as close to your property, and outlining ways to mitigate, say, those hazards, and then going out from there to zone 2, zone 3, and zone 4. It's a great way for property owners to be aware of the assets that they have on their property, and also the threats that the natural vegetation might pose. So that does a great job of categorizing different aspects of what you have on your property, and then provide some great suggestions to mitigate those hazards. Then there's the educational part of FireSmart. So it's going through the home assessments, but also the home guides of proper vegetation to have around your house, different resources of what are the best structural protection mechanisms, so sprinklers, tanks, utilizing your wells, creating that more of encompassing part about the different aspects of FireSmart. And then there's the mitigation, so the actual doing of the work. So using the assessments and the education, now coming up with that plan and capitalizing on that plan, whether that's limbing some low tree branches that are right up against a flammable shrub, or even as mowing large grass that could die in the summer and pose a fire hazard for quick ignition. So these three are the main aspects of FireSmart, and combined, they do make what is FireSmart. So next we have the Kickstart project and the project information. So what we're trying to do with this Kickstart project is develop that uniform FireSmart standard throughout the CVRD, which is capitalizing on the resources that are already available. So the fire assessments, the homeowner guides, the neighborhood plans. We're trying to educate and provide that to all residents of the Cowichan Valley. So it's a uniform plan that looks the same in say Satlam as Cobble Hill. And the great part about FireSmart is there are standards and they are black and white. And it's a great way to develop that cohesive plan. Then we wanted to assess, so what are our wildfire threats within the different communities, the individual residences, the farms and ranches? What are the threats there, but what are the resources and how we can combine those resources to mitigate those threats? And then we want to mitigate them with developing those plans and getting resources and labor out to do that. So that's the general overarching plan. And when we can create that, we want to look at plans to how can we sustain this project? How can we keep it going? Throughout the years, when different community members move out of the community, when new ones come in, how can we make this into a full-time program that's followed year over year? And that's what Joel and I really want to develop with the Kickstart program, is to make it something that we have resources throughout the year to help continue FireSmart. So moving on to the Kickstart project, the planning, echoing the previous slide, it's all a closed loop. So we conduct the residential assessments, we do the mitigation work, we keep identifying the different hazard zones, and then we zone in on those. So what can we do? And then we want to eventually recruit neighborhood champions to continue that education piece and get the community groups together and help with staying on top of the different problems or the different vegetation that could come up in the community, and trying to keep sustaining that program on and on. So as I did explain before, there is some steps for the mitigation. It could be vegetation removal. So you have some flammable shrubs that are right next to your house, or you have some high grass that should be cut. We can remove it and take away that hazard. If there would be a fire that comes in, take away so the fire doesn't have that ability to grow. We can look at tree limbing. So if you have large trees that have low-hanging branches that are right against flammable material, limbing that to the FireSmart standard of 2 meters to prevent that direct contact if there is a fire that comes through. Looking at as well consolidating debris. So having debris instead of scattered all over a property, trying to put it together in one spot and taking away that ability of it catching on fire, putting it in a safe spot where you have protected covers over it. And then looking at how can we clear access routes that might be emergency access routes to a property or a main thoroughfare. So if there was an emergency or a fire that came in, can we rely upon these routes to be clear from a danger? So that's what the mitigation aspect and that execution aspect would look at with our FireSmart program.
With that, please keep in mind that we are not looking to clear cut your properties. We still feel strongly that we need to keep vegetation. We need to keep native species. We want to try and remove the invasives, the brooms and the giant blackberry brambles and things like that. We want to keep the ferns and the shallals and things. We want to keep a very diverse biosphere in there, because we still have the pollinators, we still have the bugs, we still have things that rely on some of the dead debris, the rotting debris, some of those. So we're not looking to completely clear cut and have a gravel pit on the properties. We just want to remove a lot of the fuel so that it is a slow, creepy ground fire that doesn't have access to the crowns, because that's usually the terrifying part of the forest fires that everybody sees, is the crown fire portion of it. So by doing our vegetation removal, we're just removing enough stuff so that you don't get into the crown fires, removing ladder fuels and raising the canopy up. So please don't worry, we're not coming in there to do a clear cut on your property.
Absolutely, that's a great point, Joel. As I did mention at the start of the presentation, our two project partners are the municipality of North Cowichan and the Cowichan tribes. And to further add on with that, it's a great opportunity to partner with both of these groups, because North Cowichan has a strong history of forest management with their community forests. So it's great to have their resources available for helping us plan out our objectives with the FireSmart Smart Kickstart project. And we have the Cowichan tribes who have great experience in operational fuel mitigation. With the project, we have access to 6 fuel mitigation technicians from the Cowichan tribes who, as I mentioned, have experience with handling vegetation removal, but also experience with forest fire, wildland fire, firefighting. So they have seen fire before. They understand how fire spreads and transfers, and they take that into account when we're providing them details of the work involved, because there's no experience quite like seeing things hands-on, and we're really lucky to have that group from the Cowichan tribes. So the goals of the project and the objectives, I've kind of echoed them before previously, but to go over them again, we want to help communities and residences attain FireSmart, and a great asset to help that is by completing the home assessments. Joel and I have already conducted well over 15 assessments within the Cowichan Valley, and it's a great opportunity to ask those questions specifically about your property that you might have always been wondering and thinking about. And Joel and I are able to come out there using our background and our experience, and also going off the FireSmart principles, and come up with collective solutions. As Joel mentioned, we're not about taking away all the vegetation. We want to find that balance of maintaining the vegetation and to be harmonious with nature and still foster that biodiversity. But we also do want to help if there was a fire that was intense. We want to try and limit that intensity by removing some of the fuel that could help a fire grow immensely. We also do want to, out of this project, we want to work with farm and ranch owners, create plans. A great plan from FireSmart PC is the emergency farm workbook that identifies, the key resources that individual farm owners have, and they fill them out. Contact information, emergency contact, livestock, contact information, where if there was an intense fire, we have a plan, access egress route, staging area, a safe space to put resources to. We're effective, and then that information is shared with the emergency services to effectively make emergency situation run smoother. So we're looking at that aspect as well. And we also want to work with farm and ranch owners to come up with mitigation solutions that we can provide with our 6 field techs from the Cowichan tribes. As Joel mentioned before, limbing, cutting down debris, collecting debris, taking away debris. This is what we would be kind of looking for, similar to the homeowner side of it as well. And then thirdly, we are completing fuel mitigation activities on critical infrastructure within the valley. So that would entail communications towers, water reservoirs, treatment buildings. These are the critical pieces that if there was an emergency, we need those in place, or else the first responders couldn't effectively provide their services. So that's why we're highlighting these as critical infrastructure that we want to work on to make sure that we have those intact and within FireSmart principles. And then finally, we want to enable this information sharing by having community events, information sessions, yard removal days within communities. Already, Joel and I were out at the Duncan Farmers Market 2 Saturdays ago, and we're able to connect with some community members and educate and provide information about FireSmart. So we want to continually do that and put that information out there so it collectively gets shared.
We also want to start getting back to where we're sharing this information and working with our neighbors as well. But once again, it's just sort of overlapping each other so that 1 or 2 is stronger than 1, 4 is stronger than 2 type of thing as we sort of branch out on this. But we also need to get back to working closely within our fire district. So within the fire halls, as Chase said, the emergency services portion of it. So working in the ranch and farm kind of area it's part of building that emergency plan. In the event of a fire, a flood or whatever, what do you do? Where are your escape routes? How do you get your animals out if that's sort of one of the things that you need to get out? There's all these things that we have to be thinking about, not only for the FireSmart portion of it, but for the protection side of it as well as the evacuation side of it. So they all go together quite nicely, and we have to be prepared for that in the eventuality of these events that come through, be it fire or flood or even the windstorms, things like that. So it's all part of what we're trying to make the valley a lot more resilient to in the coming years.
Exactly. Well said, Joel. So why now? Why start now? As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, it's a great time in the winter when you don't have the threat of actual wildfires occurring, and then you also have a great ability to plan. So FireSmart is a great opportunity to do it year round. We also want to do this now and start this in the valley because, as we've seen in the last 5 years, these interface fires are becoming more and more intense and occurring more as well in habitated areas. We also acknowledge too that there are changing landscapes, allowing these fires to become more intense. So we're going further into the wilderness. We're opening up more areas. We are changing the fuel characteristics that have naturally been here. And that is in turn making the realm of wildfires become more prevalent, especially on Vancouver Island. And to add with that, the existential threat of climate change is allowing these fires to prolong and go longer, whether that's through September and October, or even starting earlier in April, or March even. So now is a great time for these reasons, because we do have changing characteristics happening especially here in the valley. So this slide is just kind of overview of the past wildfires from 2018 to 2020, and it highlights just kind of the interface areas, which are houses or resources that are within close proximity to forests and natural vegetation. That's why we call them interface areas, because they interface with the natural environment. And for wildfires, that means that they could potentially be more intense and stronger because of the natural vegetation that's already in place. So if you look on the map, you can see there's areas throughout the valley, in Satlam, north of Shawnigan Lake, out in Maple Bay, Zuhalem areas. So these are the interface areas that we look at with this program, because we can see the benefit a lot with it. I mentioned too, just before that, the changing dynamics are a big part of why we want this program. And just to reiterate, communities, residences, cabins, assets that we have, we want to be more immersed with nature, which is a great thing, but it also could pose a hazard as well, being so close to nature and all of these natural elements. And it changes the fuel characteristics. If we look at a forest, naturally, it provides shade, it provides higher humidity. We open that up, it allows different species to grow, and it also allows for more sunlight. So in the hotter months of the year, that heats up, and if there was an ignition source, it will go and burn and more intensely. So that's something that we consider, and we consider as well just the different fuel loadings from the industrial practices too, throughout all BC, but also throughout the Cowichan Valley. So it's a big part of why FireSmart is such a great avenue to pursue right now. And climate change is intensifying. We know from last summer, it was one of the hottest on record. Also had one of the highest heat daily highs, which for wildfires, it increases the intensity of fires, but also decreases, the availability of water to some of these areas, with seasonal streams drying up quicker. And streams that should be around year long are getting lower and lower without any precipitation. So that poses a threat to the response side of things, where if we can FireSmart and protect our resources, hopefully we don't want to get to that side of things. And two, like I said before, the wildfire season is starting earlier now and finishing later, so it's tying up a lot of resources. I'll maybe turn this one to you, Joel, for the benefits of FireSmart.
Thanks, Chase. So once again, the long-term goal is not to benefit just the individuals. It's to benefit our communities, whatever community is. It doesn't matter if it's Cowichan Station, Satlam, Yubo, Honeymoon Bay, Yellow Point, Cedar, all those places. This is a benefit for the valley, that if we can lessen the intensity of the fires, we're going to be a little bit ahead of the game, so to speak. We also want to work really hard to try and get back to the sort of the old mentalities of having those relationships with your fire halls and things like that, like we used to, where we can have our information sessions at the fire halls when the current medical circumstances kind of lessen a little bit, things like that. But with that, the more we do at this time of year, we're going to be less maintenance on our properties over a longer period of time, because it's not building the volume up that creates those larger intensity fires around our stuff. Over time, this is probably going to build into where, rather than spending billions upon billions every summer for fighting wildfires, that more incentives will be there for homeowners. Who knows how the province is going to go with that, but long term, it works great for everybody. And my personal favorite, and this is where the idealist in me kind of comes out, it gets us back to building the communities again, where we know our neighbors and we help out, and we get back to that sensibility of the old school. So it's all benefits everybody in the community once we start pulling it together as a proper valley again. And that is one of my biggest goals, being that I'm a long-term resident of the valley. My family's been here quite a while. We've all been firefighters and nurses and things like that. So we're well entrenched in the community and want to help it as much as we possibly can. We could all use a little unity right now. Back to you, Chase.
Well said, Joel. So here we're going to look at just a few examples of past FireSmart projects. This is in Lake Cowichan last year. And you can just see here on the left the finished product of a mature cedar tree with lower branches. And here you can see kind of what it looked like before any fire smarting happened. So there's a direct contact of the branches right onto the roof of the garage there. So if, say, that tree caught on fire, you have that direct heat transfer that would pose more of a threat to the garage. And with this FireSmart, we created that buffer zone, which is one of the key principles for mitigating wildfire hazards. Again, here we can see a cedar tree next to a garage, and with the FireSmart work, we just lifted up the limbs of the tree and created that buffer zone, allowing, if there was a fire to happen, to prevent that spread onto the house there. And here we go, another past example in Lake Cowichan, just clearing access by removing vegetation. You can see it's kind of hard to get through with the amount of low limbs, and if those caught on fire, you have lots of resources and assets that are right there, and you can see just how much neater it looks. You have a lane now to walk through. The access egress is better if there is an emergency. So these are just three minimal examples of FireSmart, but you can see how it cleans things up, it allows access, and it reduces that risk of wildfire to spread beyond to the assets that we all love. So with this initial Kickstart project, because it is a government grant through the Community Resiliency Investment Fund, there are a little bit of limitations to provide the free labor to conduct the mitigation efforts. We want to go and do every assessment that we're called upon, and that's part of the education piece of this FireSmart program that Joel and I are creating. So if you have questions about your residence, about your property, and you might not feel like, oh, you fit into this criteria, don't even hesitate to call us, because we'd love to come and assess, and we can provide you with the recommendations. And perhaps maybe at a later date, when we do have some funding available to conduct the mitigation work, we already have you in our program, and we know what's needed to do. So yeah, it's very kind of brief of the eligibility requirements, but it's looking at, older individuals, individuals with limited mobility, vulnerable community members of different ethnicities. And that's where we can help with the actual mitigation work for the project. So we're coming into kind of the end of the presentation. And again, it's looking at the future vision of what we want to create within the Cowichan Valley. We want future to develop these neighborhoods. They're, like Joel was saying, they're unified, that are creating that ability to come together and work collectively. We're looking at that through the FireSmart neighborhood recognition program, which the resources are on FireSmart BC's website, and also our CVRD FireSmart page. It talks about what the program is, how to get involved in the program, the steps to go forward. So if you're in a community where you feel that this would be a great fit for you for FireSmart, and you know of multiple community members who have the same feeling, if you can firstly reach out to Joel and I at the CVRD, but if not, there's a bunch of these resources online about how the neighborhood recognition program goes, and you can look at those. So it kind of starts with the neighborhood. You contact a FireSmart representative, which could be Joel and I, or it could be someone who has knowledge of FireSmart within the community. And you complete the neighborhood wildfire assessment. So you complete the large-scale assessment of the community, the neighborhood with that LFR, or with either Joel and I from the CVRD, and we come up with just the overall plan and objectives of the neighborhood. And then from there, it can be setting up events. So getting everyone together for information sessions, going over the FireSmart program, heightening that awareness. And then finally, once those are completed, the plan is in place, you can apply for the neighborhood recognition. And that's what Joel and I want to come from this initial grant, is having these communities become self-sufficient in the aspect of going after and recruiting community members to participate in FireSmart, to get out there to spread information, because we see it as a great opportunity to unify the different areas of the valley toward the common principles of FireSmart. And here is just some benefits of the program. So we have days where you can get together as a community. You can have incentive programs. It's great for getting to know your neighbors, but also working collectively together. And here's just a snapshot of past and present CVRD communities that have applied for the recognition program. Lake Cowichan has been a steward of the program with multiple communities, but also too, there's Eagle Heights and Duncan that past have come together and applied for this neighborhood recognition. So that does conclude the presentation, and I appreciate everybody for listening, and I'll turn it over to Chris there to facilitate some Q&A if anyone has any questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much, guys. That was a really informative presentation. I think you covered off everything in some great details, some great examples, and pretty sure anybody who either tuned in or watched this at a later date is going to have a really thorough understanding of what's being offered through the broader program and this specific phase with the Kickstart project. I will ask if anybody in attendance does have any questions that they want to pose to Chase or Joel, to please feel free to do so now through the Q&A feature here. I haven't seen any questions come in during the presentation. and I honestly can't imagine what you wouldn't have covered in there. I will give it a sec, but I do want to point out that we have a great deal of information available on the FireSmart page of our website. You can really easily navigate directly to that by Googling CVRD FireSmart. You'll also find handy links directly off our homepage, which we will have active as soon as this presentation concludes, so you can easily direct to that. Within that page, you're going to find, like I said, a wealth of information, as well as a application form that you can fill out directly through the website and submit, that Joel and Chase will get a chance to review and get back to you for an assessment and talk a little bit more about your property and maybe some of the needs that you might have or hazards you've identified, and to go from there. But it's kind of a one-stop shop for all this information. So this video will also be posted onto that page as well. And other than that, I think that everybody is going to be able to find everything that they want. And like I said, and the contact information for Joel and Chase appears there as well. So you can reach out to them directly if you have any further questions after you've watched this. So with that, again, not seeing any questions coming in from our attendees, so just want to thank those that took the time this evening to take part in this presentation and get some information. And we've had some great uptake, I think, so far on the project already to date with the work these guys have been doing over the last few weeks, and looking forward to having them working in our communities over the coming months. And potentially some further announcements about extensions of the program maybe coming at a later date, maybe even in the very immediate future. Can't say much more than that, but it's definitely something that we're very happy to have rolling out through our communities. And so thanks for the work that you've done, guys. Thank you very much to everybody who's attended, and for those of you watching this at a later date. Oh, I do see Linda has posed a question. Let me just get into it here. You know what, Linda, your questions have not come through. What I'm going to do is let me just open up our attendee list here. And Linda, I'm hoping that you have the ability to speak on your microphone. I'm unmuting you right now, Linda. Do you have a question that you want to ask Joel and Chase?
Well, sorry. My main question is, the summers have changed, and for the last few summers, I'm always complaining to CVRD bylaw officers about people logging in the area using heavy duty equipment. This summer, we actually had a new neighbor clearing their property and logging in the heat of summer using heavy duty equipment. One neighbor has a sawmill. But CVRD, the bylaw, it seems to be the attitude that people are entitled to do what they want on their own private property, and it's up to them to use common sense. But things have changed in the last few years, and I don't think you can rely on people to use their own common sense. I'm not sure if they have the logging done in summer because it's easier to get fallers, or because they're cheaper, because they're not allowed to log commercially. So I feel that there should be bylaws to stop private landowners in hot weather carrying out high-risk fire activities. I live in an urban forest interface area. The nearest fire station is 18 kilometers away. I live next to Shemana's First Nations people. And when I look at it, I can see fire skipping over like Shell Beach Road, and if it got way out of control, then you're going to have it go over Woodley Range into Cedar. But as I say, my main concern is there's no bylaws to stop people in extreme temperatures carrying on high-risk activities on their property due to either cost or impatience of wanting to get things done.
Okay, thank you for that.
But thank you very much for your presentation. I do appreciate everything you're doing, and it's very timely. And I think it's kind of advanced thinking because we are at such high fire risk times these days.
Appreciate those comments, Linda. Very timely and some relevant examples of activities that that could potentially be high risk during wildfire season. I don't know if we're prepared in this presentation to address the activities that people might be doing on their private properties during those times. I think certainly the comments that you're making are valid and would be best directed to our elected officials, particularly the chairperson of our board, to, you know, as correspondence that could be brought up in a public meeting to maybe potentially address these issues and maybe look at what we might be able to do to hopefully alleviate some of this. But I don't know if Joel, if you have any, you know, as a firefighter in the area, if you have anything to add along those lines.
Basically what happens when it comes to the logging and things like that, there are specifics that they have to follow. You can't log past a certain amount of time during the day, typically. They have fire watch or spark watch. There's all kinds of things that they have in place. They also have, there's usually some form of fire suppression, either water cans with a spray nozzle on them. There's all these things that they do have in place. But I can't speak specifically of where it is, how it's going on, or anything else like that. What I can speak to is that if we can FireSmart around it, if something does happen, we can definitely make an impact on the intensity of any fire, that if it may or may not happen.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Again, thanks to Linda for the great question. And I just I'm concerned though that Linda may have submitted questions that didn't come in, so I do just want to quickly give Shauna here an opportunity and unmute her. And Shauna, if you have a question for our presenters, please go ahead. And if not, that's all right as well.
No, I didn't have a question, but I do thank you for the information, and I'm definitely interested in the community aspect and supporting my neighbors. I'm in Shawnigan Lake, and it didn't look like there was any kind of FireSmart going on out here, and I think we could be a vulnerable community, so I thank you for this.
Well, thank you very much for that comment. Thank you for attending. Very much appreciated. Sorry, Joel, do you want to add something?
Fear not, Shauna. We actually have several properties out there that we are in the process of assessing and probably going to be doing some work out there. So in the near future, you're going to see our FireSmart signs, and you're going to hear the buzz of chainsaws out there as we're working on some of your neighbors.
And I guess that kind of brings up a great point in that, you know, we're really hoping that the community and the residents who are, you know, have tuned into this can spread the word, not the fire, but the word about the FireSmart program out to their neighbors, and create a better awareness for some of the work we're doing and the opportunities that are available as well, and direct people to that information on our website. It's kind of the best way we can hopefully achieve kind of critical mass and make a real dent on this issue in our region. So yeah, well, with that, again, thanks to the attendees. Thank you so much, Joel and Chase, for this. I'm sure you're going to be flooded with applications and calls and questions about this. And so I look forward to working with you guys in the future to help get this word out. And I know that you'll be visible out in the community in the coming months doing some of this great work. So thanks again, everybody, and have a wonderful day or evening, whatever time it might be when you're seeing this. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thanks for all the great work that we're going to be starting out in the community.
Yeah, thanks again. It's going to be a great time of promoting FireSmart, and get the sense that we have a lot of interested members in the community. So Joel and I are very happy to be here, and we look forward to continuing our service. Thanks again.